Hi, this is Will Allred, and you're listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast.
Yes, welcome back, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, and we are broadcasting from Grant Mansion once again. Look, it's a little bit brisk, it's a little chilly, mansions are big, rooms are spacious, but that's okay. I've got good company tonight. I'm very glad to have with me for this, the next in the ISLA RA Sessions, Will Allred, one of the co-hosts from the Quantum Zone, a Quasar Podcast. Will, welcome to Grant Mansion.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is been looking forward to this.
Excellent. Will, are you okay? I know it's a bit cold. There's a bit of a draft. You know, the windows are, 8 feet tall. Trying to use your system. High ceilings. Are you okay? Is the fire okay for you?
It's perfect.
Okay. Well, if you need to, we can always summon Samuels to stoke the fire, give it a little bit of a poke, and everything should be good. But anyway, so glad to have you on here, Will. For loony listeners, this is the ISLA RA, and for those of you that haven't listened to the ISLA RAs before, what we do, this is our kind of desert island sessions. So what happens is special guests come on, we get to learn a bit more about them. Generally they are either podcasters or creative types, have another avenue to spruce their creative works. So we've got Will on, and then what we'll do is we'll go through Will's 4 desert island, or like what I like to call the ISLA RA books. What are 4 single issues that you could not live without, or if you're stuck on the ISLA RA. So, Will, this is going to be good. Look, before we get into any of that, and what we actually have a bit of a special thing here with Will, because, Will, you've actually, is it about 16 runner-ups, right?
Yeah, I did. So when you contacted me, I was like, oh my God, this is hard. So I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to try to list out a bunch of single issues that have kind of mattered to me or I think are really, really good. And I came up with 20. And then I pulled my top 4 from that. And then so I listed those 16 runner-ups in my weekly newsletter. And I've been slowly trying to discuss each one of them and kind of why they're important. It's interesting because, I grew up in rural Arkansas. Not that where I live now in Arkansas is hugely populated, but super rural Arkansas as a kid, and I was a Marvel, kid. I read. You'll notice I wear glasses, and I put that down to Mark Grunwald because I pored over those official handbooks of the Marvel Universe. that super tiny type. I would read everything. I probably read each one of those deluxe edition books, 50 times. So it's, that's, I branched out, once I got older and read a lot more stuff and kind of got sucked into the indie world myself because I just love comics.
Oh, and your 20, I guess, choices are a real testament to, I guess, the depth that you go into with your comic book reading, which is fantastic. I'd love to go through. What we'll do, we'll go through the 16 just briefly. Some of them I recognise, some of them I don't, but I love learning from guests that come on, that come to Grant Mansion about these comics. And it's interesting, without giving too much away yet, Will, what was like the strategy, I guess, for picking those 4 out of the 20? Like, did you imagine yourself on a desert island? Was it like, okay, I need something to really work my mind, or do I need something to really just have fun, have a bit of a popcorn adventure? How did you approach it?
Well, I kind of tried to look back, and and one, I wanted to look at the craft, because there's a lot of great single issues out there, but not just on craft, because something can be, a technically perfect book, but just kind of leave me cold. So it had to be something that mattered to me. I have a lot of love for certain issues, so that played into a lot of it. And if it was kind of like, well, what can I remember? What individual issues do I remember? And so, boom, those got written down. And and there are some issues that, well, there's one in particular we'll talk about later that probably would never show up on anybody's best of list, but I read it at the right time, when I was 10 or 11 or 12. And, the final, one of the final scenes of that book have stayed with me for, decades at this point. So, hey, it had to go on the list too.
And that is far-reaching as well. What I was about to say was that I guess nostalgia has a lot to say, to play in it, and there could be instances where you do have something that you read and you look back on it now and you read it now and you kind of go, oh, that probably wasn't the best, but I really did enjoy it when I was young. So it's really good to hear that you've found a few that have just kind of resonated throughout the years. So that's really cool. Also as well, Loonies, what we'll do, I forgot to mention as well, so Will has picked his top 4 books. We'll go through it a bit later. There are links in the show notes. They'll be encrypted, so you can either choose to reveal them to yourself now and have a little quick look, go read them, come back to the podcast, and then, I guess, understand a bit more about the books that we're going to talk about, or you can be surprised and just wait until we get as we reveal them from ranked 4 to rank 1. Very, very exciting indeed. Speaking of these particular books, Will, what I did get over the radio communique was in the moon cave downstairs of this Grant Mansion. I got a Morse code. I had to translate it, and it was from Phil, Drop King Phil, your co-host from the Quantum Zone. So I might just play this on this old-fashioned wax cylinder, I guess, because it's really old-fashioned.
Why not?
So let's just hear what Phil had to say, and welcome him on board as well. Take it away, Phil.
Hello, Ray and Will. This is Phil from the Quantum Zone on the Capes and Lunatic Sidekicks podcast. Yeah, I know. Sound like Ray. Probably couldn't tell the difference. No, but I just wanted to drop my 2 cents in because, once again, just like with Matt Kona, you have one of my co-hosts on, Mr. Will Allred, who I consider, everyone on my team is the best in the business, but, Will has the nerd cred, and people, if you didn't know, if he didn't tell you this already on this podcast, Will actually taught a class on comic books, so. But anyway, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I could leave feedback on because I don't know what books you picked, Will. I don't know what you guys are covering, so I was going to take a guess. So here we go. First I was going to say maybe a Quasar, maybe Quasar 25, but we cover Quasar every week on the Quantum Zone, like I said. Alright, here's my guesses. I'm going to say Will picked an Avengers issue, probably a Roger Stern written Avengers issue. Probably also picked, if he went DC, probably picked a Hal Jordan Green Lantern, because Hal Jordan is his favorite Green Lantern. Maybe a Walt Simonson Thor, because he did teach that in a class, and he does like that run, so maybe. And then for the 4th book, nothing specific I could pin down, but I bet you maybe pick something that's not Marvel or DC, maybe an indie book. So those are my picks. Yeah, the Avengers by Roger Stern, a Walt Simonson Thor, some kind of Hal Jordan Green Lantern adventure, and some indie book. Alright, and I'm sure Will's going to tell you all about this, but hey, pick up his self-published work, Diary of Night. If you love vampires, check it out. I give it my highest recommendation, and for me to recommend something that's not Marvel or DC, it takes a lot, so yeah, show this guy the love, and he'll tell you how to get that. So, thanks for letting me have the floor, Ray.
Sounds like a plan, Jan.
Thank you. So, until next time, catch ya.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for your communique tied to the leg of a pigeon and flew thousands of miles to get here. I'm glad it arrived, Phil. Will, some, dare I say, insightful, astonishing predictions from young Mr. Perich.
Absolutely. He knows my taste pretty well. We've hung out a lot over the last couple of years, so he definitely knows what I read.
Actually, I'm a little disappointed that Phil didn't get it issue by issue, because he's quite thorough. What always amazes me, and actually amazes what amazes me about you as well, and to Matt as well, I'm not going to take anything away from Matt, all three of you, is that the level of knowledge you guys have with your comics and the references, the amount that you can recall as well. I remember there was one episode, I think, where... I think Phil was talking about his ISLA RA books, and he casually mentioned to you, Captain America 350. Now, unless you're you must be a big fan, right, Cap? Because... it's like, okay, it's a milestone issue, but you were like, that's when US Agent and the Captain met. Yeah, so that sort of stuff, really impressive. Phil does it as well. He pulls it out. He's pretty good with it. But thank you, Phil. Disappointed you didn't get them, issue for issue, but there you go. Anyway, Will, now we are well invested into comics. What the one of the first core questions I do like to ask my guests is how did you get into comics? So you mentioned previously rural Arkansas, growing up. What made you look at that spinner rack or jump into that LCS?
Well, it was a spinner rack actually in a local drugstore, and I don't know. Reading has just always been something that I kind of felt compelled to do, I guess, and I spent a lot of time in front of that spinner rack reading things that sometimes I would buy, and sometimes they would just let me stay in there because they were nice and knew me and my parents and everything, but. This was, quite some time ago, because, geek culture was not ascendant at that time. So there were not a lot of other people around with my kind of same interests, especially in, rural Arkansas. And comics just kind of became that, hey, what's happening this week, in this book, or what's happening, this week in the other book. And it was, I don't know, I just kind of became enthralled, and I'll be straight up, 80s Marvel is like probably written into my DNA at this point, because I've read so many of those books. You had the Uncanny X-Men by Claremont, and I think I remember John Romita Jr. being on there, Alan Davis, my great love of other issues as well, which we will talk about.
And are you more of a, I guess, as you mentioned, you do like reading. Were you more drawn towards the writing aspect or the art aspect of comic books?
I don't know. There's something really amazing about comics because, it's the combination of the words and the pictures, and there's more to it than that. If anybody that's read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud knows that, it's all about the sequence and the gutter, the blood in the gutters, which it's a great chapter title. But I don't know, it's such an efficient way to tell a story visually. But comics are so hard to make and so labor intensive that it may be efficient on that end, but it's really time consuming on the front end to make them. I don't know. Maybe I was just born at the right time, but the visual aspect of how to tell a story has become, I feel like, more and more important over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And while comics, the direct market in the U.S. is not huge, but comics as a medium have just kind of exploded all over the world.
Yeah.
It is the most efficient way to tell a story. I mean, if you look back at Eisner, Will Eisner was doing these comics on how to upkeep stuff, and equipment for the military, because it was the best way and most efficient way to both show and tell.
Oh, right.
And it's just...
It's probably not as dry as like a real just written manual, and it would actually keep people's interest in it, and as well make it very accessible, like imparting knowledge, make it a lot more accessible than something that may be intimidating if you're looking at a thick phone book of something to read.
Oh, yeah.
So
some technical manual that will put you to sleep after 5 minutes. Yeah.
I know what I'd prefer to read. So and so I don't know. So like, how did so with that, like with the writing and stuff, did you read a lot of sci-fi or fantasy stuff before, or like there's an associative, I guess, hobby that people do? And for your case, it might be reading, I'm assuming, but other people have the video games, or they watch Saturday morning cartoons, which kind of gets them into the characters. What was it for you that kind of really? I guess I'm really digging here, Will. I've almost got you on a couch here. Like, I feel like I'm a psychologist. What actually drew you to the spinner rack? Was it kind of like, I've got time to kill, or is it, this actually looks interesting?
I don't remember. I mean, I haunted the local library a lot, just reading, and it may have been backwards, but I feel like comics kind of got me into even more reading. Instead of reading, getting me into comics. One of the first, I think it's like Green Lantern 121 or something. He's falling out of a plane and has lost his power ring, which is, it's bad because you can't fly without it. But I seem to remember picking that up, off of a spinner rack. I never knew how it ended until years later, because it ended on a cliffhanger. But that, I feel like, led me into, I've always loved sci-fi. I'm not as huge a fantasy fan, and I think that mainly has to do with later in life when I was doing my university work, because I was lucky enough to take a couple of classes that were just devoted to sci-fi, and we really dug into the inner workings and kind of the what makes sci-fi different. What is it that makes a book sci-fi? And from that academic standpoint, that was really interesting to me. So now, science fiction is probably my favorite genre, just because of that. Fantasy, I've seen some authors do some amazing things with fantasy. Someone like China Mieville, who did
The Scar, Perdido Street Station. Yeah, big fan of them, actually. Yeah.
And one of my professors, he put it really brilliantly, I thought. He goes, the reason those books are so good is because they're fantasy, but they feel like science fiction. I went, okay, that's why I like them so much, And
right,
at this point, I've read probably almost everything that Mieville's put out, and he's such an amazing writer, because I was discussing with a coworker, because I've known him several of these books. He's got such a unique voice that, if you look at Perdido Street Station and The Scar and the last one, I can never remember the name of the last one of that.
The Iron Council?
Iron Council.
Yeah.
You look at those three books, they feel a certain way, but every other book that he does feels different. You look at Kraken. You look at.
I haven't read that one. Yeah, I'd like to, though.
The City in the City. I mean, there's just some wild sci-fi things that he pulls off, and I'm trying to look. Let's see.
He's not that old as well, right? He's probably
he's probably late 30s, early 40s. Maybe.
Yeah. Amazing the world he creates. You know, it's
He's and he's kind of a darling of the Marxist critics, which is kind of where I am from doing my graduate and postgraduate stuff. So he's just a really interesting writer, and then I say I don't like fantasy. Okay, of course the Lord of the Rings movies are awesome. I do remember trying to read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to my sons, because that's one of the things I did every night. I would read at bedtime, and those books, as well loved as they are not really meant to be read out loud. There's so many. The sentences go on and on.
Yeah,
and
they do, don't they?
They're so hard to read out loud. So that kind of the thing about the boys and I is we loved the John Carter books. I probably read them out loud like 4 times to them. Princess of Mars, Gods of Mars, and Warlord of Mars in particular. But we went ahead and read the other ones as well. And it has the sword fights. It has the sci-fi Mars. I mean, it was.
How do you like? That's a long thing, right? So how much do you get in per bedtime read? One chapter, or is it like half a chapter?
I would probably read for 30 minutes.
Okay, cool.
45, sometimes an hour, because they're like, keep going. And I'm kind of an old softy, I guess, because that's. Eventually, the boys got old enough. They were like, Dad, we're 16 now. You don't need to read to us anymore. I'm like, but I like reading to you.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, for sure.
So that's one of the things I really miss about them being younger. Every night, I could look forward to us reading, and we read. You can't see it up on the bookshelf, but we have the hardbacks of the original Hardy Boys.
Oh, okay.
We went through all of those. About 5 or 10 books in, they were like, okay, this is where they get knocked out. Okay, this is where this happens. I'm like, hey guys, we started it, we're going to finish it. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. Oh, look, I reckon anyway, regardless of the fact of if they're saying, you don't need to read this, those are memories that they will cherish anyway, because it reminds me of a good friend of mine as well. He's actually moved to another state now. We went to the same school, and his parents, or I'm assuming it's his dad, would read Lord of the Rings and stuff to him and his brothers when he was young. But yeah, he has fond memories of that, being young and having the folks read to you. So I mean, I guess as much as they probably shirk away from it now, being the edgy teenagers, they'll look back on it, and they'll love it.
I guess I probably talk about this all the time, but they're identical twins.
Yeah.
So they.
Do you ever get them mixed up?
Well, okay, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. They typically would dress in a particular color, but if I looked at them from behind and I wasn't sure who was wearing what color that day, it'd be like, hey, you kid. So whoever you are.
You don't like walk around with a permanent marker and just kind of like, just mark one of them. There you go.
As a comics fan, I might have suggested tattoos when they were really young, but my wife talked me back, so there we
go. We'll get through some of these books as well, and some of your ranks, but I know, I guess I wanted to touch upon, and this kind of fed into that last question about your books and what you do read, and so it doesn't surprise me that you're saying sci-fi, because it seems to me, being one of the co-hosts for the Quasar Podcast, Quantum Zone, and there being no secrets that you do like Green Lantern, you seem to have a cosmic edge to you when it comes to comics. Is that fair to say? I mean, I do know you're 4, so I can say that it's not necessarily so, but
completely fair. I mean, science fiction is just of course, Star Trek, Star Wars, you get all of those I mean, all
Earth
those
One.
things have. Yeah. I don't think we want to go down that road.
Okay, fair enough.
But well, and that's something that's. I mean, I consider Empire Strikes Back a perfect movie.
Yeah,
it's one of those, that I can watch again and miss things. There was a great little podcast that did this is why Star Wars works as movies, and this is why Star Trek doesn't. And he started talking about Empire and the way the colors and the staging of it. You had Vader above, and it was just like there was so much thought and subtext put into not only the staging but the set design and everything that I can keep finding new stuff every time I watch that movie, and I've seen it a few times.
Oh yeah, great. No, I mean it is highly regarded, isn't it? And you'd be, definitely no surprises. And I'd be disappointed if you hadn't watched it more than once. Let's just say that. Just quickly, little hot takes. What do you think of the latest ones or the prequels?
I think they're beautiful. Mm-hmm. They're really beautiful. I mean, that's one of the things that in the prequels, I can sit back and watch them.
Not so much.
Yeah, they're still nice looking movies, and I have the memories of me and the boys, and my father going to see them. So those are good. And the current ones, I have to say that just like from a cinematography and CGI and the effects and everything, they are absolutely just beautiful. I mean, they are just amazingly beautiful. You look at every shot, and there's it's just beautiful. Story wise, I always have my Star Wars. So and I guess I really came into this trilogy. And I really wanted to like, and I do like Rey as the main character, but that name.
Yeah. The amount of times that I get mistaken for Rey walking down the street, it's uncanny. Yeah, exactly.
I really wanted to like the character, and there are some really likable characters. It's just that I don't know. It doesn't have the. It just doesn't feel like Star Wars to me, honestly. Yeah. And I think part of the problem is, and I guess I'll go down this rabbit hole a little bit. For us to get to where they are in Episode 7, every one of the characters that I pretty much grew up with and have read multiple books about and watched the movies and all that stuff, they all had to fail in almost every respect of their lives to get us to the point where suddenly there's a giant, planet Death Star thing now. So it just seemed really, so there's no hope. I mean, it just seems so bleak, Yeah. But that's just this old man.
Yeah, I think Star Wars is really because it's such a big beast, isn't it? So there's a lot of expectations, a lot of standards. Everyone has their own way or reason why they like it. And so it would be a monumental task to try and appease everyone, and especially even with those prequels, I'd imagine fans were just as excited, but also just as critical of them because they value it so much. I can understand it, but yeah, it's I don't know whether it's a mishandling of Disney or whatever or how that goes. I do watch the movies. I can't say that I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I know the characters. I know who Yoda is. So,
Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
The child.
You seen The Mandalorian, right? Did you like that? I enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty good.
Me, my wife, the boys, we really liked it. It was it was, there was a certain nostalgia hit to it too, but it was so well made.
It was for a TV show. It's like a movie. Yeah.
It was like, boom, we've got individual episodes that they've taken this, cinematic quality to. So yeah, we really loved that. And I've heard, honestly, great things about, the Clone Wars and Rebels, but
the animated series?
Yeah, the animated stuff. And I just haven't had a chance. I remember seeing the first, the movie Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. Now, and again, I'm probably showing my age here. Clone Wars to me are the animated, Ginty Tartakovsky, that were on Cartoon Network. Like the 5-minute episodes or 6-minute episodes that had, Mace Windu. You got to see these really cool, because we were big fans of Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab. I mean, that's what the boys grew up on,
okay.
and those are just awesome. So that's my first thought, is the really animated, the traditional animated Clone Wars is the first thing I think of. And then there was the CG animated series, which I thought it started out pretty good, but apparently it got really, really good even later on. So that's one of those things that's kind of on my list to circle back around and watch and see how it turned out. And then Rebels as well is I understand really good too.
Yeah, me too. I've heard from a few people now peppering me to go watch it, and so I've got to find time to watch. What is it, like over 100 episodes or something? So it's going to take a while, but I'll get there. Anyway, Will, speaking of the fantastic creativity of Star Wars, let's now talk about the fantastic creativity coming from that brain of yours, Will. So for loonies that don't know as well, Will, you do, and you alluded to earlier, you do create your own comics as well. So there is a regular newsletter that comes out. It's called the Midnight Hour, and it keeps everyone up to date with your projects, how things are going, some sneak peeks, some previews as to concept art, even like titles, stuff like that. Currently, because I get it, currently there's a project called Crossovers, which you are working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that for any loony listeners that might be interested?
Sure. It's going to have to be, unfortunately, renamed. There was a book that was just announced from Image called Crossover, and I'm like, oh man, and it's coming out in November, and I think it's by Donny Cates, and I can't remember the artist. Yeah. But and I've got a Kickstarter plan right now to launch in November for the series. But after talking to a bunch of other creators, they're like, dude, just change the name and move on. But it was because I've been really careful about going through all my process to get everything ready for the Kickstarter, and I was like, this was not on my checklist. Yeah. Okay. Like, what? So it kind of threw me for a loop. And then I just found out like 2-3 days ago, I think they announced it as part of the Comic-Con at Home stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, this was not something that I was expecting. And it's thrown me a little bit, but I think we've got maybe a new name. Mm-hmm. I think we might go with like Crossover Division. Mm-hmm. But basically it's stories, public domain for obvious reasons. Start kind of invading reality, and only an English professor and a research librarian kind of have the smarts and the knowledge to save reality. So it's really kind of cool. We get in the first little 8-page story that I did with my artist Pablo Martinena, who is amazing. He's great. And then I work with Brant Fowler, who's our letterer designer. He's pretty awesome. He's pretty awesome.
That was good, yeah.
Does a really good job. But we cross over. So we cross over with the Wizard of Oz in this little 8-page story. Wow. It shows up, and they have to stop the crossover. It's a lot of fun, and I've already scripted the first 4 issues. This 8-page stories are obviously done. I scripted the first 4 issues, and then I scripted a one-shot. But the cool thing is I get to I get to do something kind of my own poor version of a little bit of what Warren Ellis was doing on Planetary, which was taking in a concept and seeing why it was cool, right?
Okay.
And so in the first issue, which will be kickstarting in November, we look at War of the Worlds. So it's also how does he get into the beginning? It's the origin issue kind of thing. But what would a 50, 100-foot Martian tripod look like? Walking down the street, and you're like, oh wow, that's cool, but oh crap,
Yeah.
And it's really fun. I'm a tremendous fan of Walter Simonson's work, and he's Nat or something. He always works with, I think the letter's Tom Morzakowski. So, and you can always tell his lettering, the big doom, that goes all over the page.
Yeah.
So we play a little bit with that just because I'm one of those weird people that notice lettering.
Yeah.
It's because it's so important to how you perceive the story, but yet it's kind of ubiquitous. It's just there. And that's my Basset Hound over there. That's Otis.
Oh, you
Midnight Hour Dog.
You brought the Basset Hound with you to Grant Mansion, right? Yeah, so we've got him.
Right.
Yeah, we've got him drinking some water.
Yeah. He liked the dog. But anyway, lettering is so important, and bad lettering can ruin a story. And it's great to work with Brant because he's such a really great letterer. I just like to play with a lot of those aspects because I'm like, hey, we can do something cool with the lettering. Let's do something cool with the lettering, right? Let's do something different. It's not just those are the words on the page, because there's a real design sense to it that has to look good as a graphic element, but it also controls the flow of the story.
Yes.
The way the art should lead your eye, but speech balloons and captions and all of those graphic elements that are words also help, kind of the flow of the story. So it's just fun to pick these things apart and say, okay, we're going to try to do this, or we're going to try to do that. The second issue, we deal with Dracula.
Awesome.
The book, and
does he have the man buns like Gary Oldman? The big
no, but he does have a mustache in the book. He has this mustache, and so we're trying to be we try to be as faithful to we can as whatever work that we're crossing over with. But what's always kind of fascinated me about Dracula is the brides. So this kind of focuses more on the brides of Dracula and how which gets into all the weird Victorian attitudes toward women and all these things I kind of want to get out there. And then the final, so this first arc is 4 issues. The final arc is going to be dealing with some Shakespeare stuff. Because there's good Shakespeare stuff, and then there's Shakespeare stuff that I find really annoying. So we get both of them in there.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I love the concept of crossovers because it's immediately, I guess, for readers, there'd be something that they would immediately kind of grab onto, like whether it's knowing about Dracula or the War of the Worlds, and they can associate that. And also then it's a limitless playfield, isn't it? You can pick anything, and it's great. So the massive potential possibilities of stories to tell there. Really good.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Also wanted to say as well, you're right about the lettering. It's so true because it's not an overtly obvious thing to work and manipulate on and to create your book and tell your story. But I'm sure any of you listening out now who do read comics, you just understand what it means that the letters can make or break really a comic, and it can really ruin a story if it's done really bad. But as you say as well, there's that craft of leading the eye and the word bubbles, and I'd imagine also as well there's a bit of there's a bit of push and pull between the writer and the artist as well. Of you don't want to populate the whole panel with writing, and it becomes too kind of verbose. You'd like to have some sort of give for the medium, the visual medium, to actually tell the story as well. So there's so much, I guess, at work there. It's quite amazing. Also, lastly as well, you mentioned Walter Simonson, fantastic, Walt Simonson. Recently, his wife, right, Hall of Fame.
That's
Louise
right. That
Simonson.
was just announced last night, I think.
Yeah.
She was just Louise Simonson was just inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame.
Eisner Hall of Fame, rightly so.
Very well deserved. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's fantastic. Also, as well, so Crossovers, which is coming over, starting to hopefully drop in November. Through Kickstarter as well, and we'll place the relevant links in the show notes for any violinists out there interested to find out more about it. But you had a project before that, and this is what I kind of got into, which was Diary of Night as well, and that was a creation through Kickstarter as well.
It actually started out. We were listed in Diamond. It was through a really small press company called Bloodfire Studios. So Gene Gonzalez is a wonderful artist. He and I did the 4 issues, and then Bloodfire put them out. So that was several years ago, and we had these issues done. And I have to mention the rest of the team. Russ Wooten was our letterer and designer, and he's a beast. Diary's probably not his best known work. There's this little indie book from Image called Walking Dead that he letters as
really?
well.
I never heard of it.
Which, it's a little, nobody's ever heard of it, right? He also does all the design and lettering for Monstress, which is beautiful.
The lettering in Monstress is really good, yeah.
So Russ is, I feel lucky to have worked with him before he got, a superstar as a letterer. But Diary was a lot of fun because ultimately, here we go. Ooh, there it is.
There you go, Patrinis. Lovely.
But it kind of grew out of, I don't really feel like I'm a horror writer. Because I don't know, that genre doesn't really appeal to me a lot. I mean, I understand its appeal and what it is extremely popular. But my approach to Diary was, okay, I kind of backed into the whole vampire thing because I was more interested in, if I had immortality, what would I do? And okay, well, I'd read a lot, and she reads a lot. And
there's always that thought, isn't there? You must have come across it millions of times, reading, going, I'll never be able to read everything in my lifetime.
Exactly.
Because there's just so much out there. Yeah. So it's.
So then I kind of backed in. Well, how do I make her immortal? Well, there's an easy shortcut. Everybody knows that, hey, vampires are immortal. So boom, let's make her a vampire. But then I thought, well, if vampires exist, I started treating it more like kind of this unwanted condition. It was treating them more like a persecuted minority, because, this happens to you. Oh my God, what does even this mean? How do I live? How do I survive? Do I have to kill people? I don't really want to kill people, to live. So, having her try to help, just her, what she considers her people, and give them a place where they could, be safe, because, safety is kind of, important to, especially the people who can only be out and about half the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of backed into it that way, and then I wanted to tell story for her. I wanted to kind of give her that origin story, but have her past kind of come back to catch up to her, and kind of put her through the ringer. Recently, I did another Kickstarter where I've got these soft covers. I basically did kind of a flash fiction challenge for myself, where I wrote a 100-word story.
Yeah.
And that 100-word story, I hand lettered into 100 copies of the books. There's 100 copies of the softcover that have their own individual 100-word diary entries, is what I called it.
It's really cool.
And that was a tremendous amount of fun because I could have the breadth of history from 1,000 years ago. She's like 1,100 years old, and I got to play with what are some cool dates that maybe she's somewhere. She's been to Italy during the Renaissance. She met briefly Michelangelo. She met Da Vinci. And talked to him a little bit.
Are you much of a historian? Do you like a lot of history? Do you read a lot of history, stuff like that?
I try to. I don't read as much as I want to. I've got a great book on World War II, the Pacific Theater. It's called Hirohito's War, I think. Because the Pacific Theater has always kind of interested me more than the European theater in World War II. Because, and I tell people this, they're like, "What? You're weird." I'm like, yes, I know I'm weird, but anyway, I only exist because of polio.
Right.
So let me explain that.
I was thinking, is polio some sort of god? No,
polio is a disease.
Yeah.
So my father was born in 1950. Okay. My grandfather had been drafted in 43 and had went through basic training, and he was bound for Iwo Jima, which bloody fighting. Well, not a lot of people didn't come home from Iwo Jima, both sides. But my uncle, who was born I think in 41 or something like that, he got polio. So my grandfather, they said, you need to go back to your family and take care of your kids. So he wasn't sent to Iwo Jima. Odds are, if he was sent to Iwo Jima, he probably wouldn't have come home, which means my father wouldn't have been born, and which would have made it kind of difficult for me to be born as well.
Exactly. I'm not too clued in on biology, but I reckon that probably wouldn't be possible.
Anyway, I guess that's kind of why I'm so fascinated with that Pacific Theater. I mean, the fighting was just so bloody. World War II is just an interesting thing too. The battle against fascism, and because I'm finishing up my second story for the third issue of Always Punch Nazis, which is I think on Kickstarter right now, which is a lot of fun. I'm working with the artist Robin Davis, who we did a story for number 2, which was pretty well received, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Cool.
This one I hope, I'll keep trying. Hopefully I've gotten a little bit better every time, but
nice.
we hope that it's going to be as good as the first one, if not better. So that's a long-winded way of I don't know where we were going with that, but
no, but I guess the takeaway is that, geez, like you are very industrious with your writing. I mean, geez, you're talking about those 100 words. You're constantly writing. It's quite a feat, and it's quite amazing actually. So that's really, it's really commendable.
Well, I try to be inspired by, other creators inspire me and, kind of spur me on to work. One of your fellow countrymen, Ryan K. Lindsay, is an amazing writer, and he's just able to get so much done with the day job and the family, and I feel kind of like a slacker compared to him. So
yeah, I mean, you can imagine, because writing just takes up so much time. That's unfair to say on other crafts as well, because I'm sure they take just as much time. But it just seems like writing, it requires a lot of solitary just focus, a lot of time management putting aside. So it's very difficult to understand how people multitask and juggle them. So it always amazes me. It's amazing to kind of see.
Well, for me, I've always kind of fought the idea of time management. I always want to be able to get lots of stuff done in the shortest amount of time possible. So I kind of went through this productivity phase where I'm like, I want to have a spreadsheet where I track every 15 minutes of what I do. That lasted about half a day. I'm like, this is nuts. I can't do this.
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the creators that I work with, Tyler James of the Comics Launch podcast and Comics Tribe, he got us these
nice
full focus planners, which are pretty cool. So what it does is say, look, they're for 90 days. It makes you put in I want to get these 10 things done in a year, but I'm going to focus on these 3 or 4 things for this quarter. And to be honest, once I started using that, I've been more productive than ever because it reminds me and forces me to focus on what I want to get done.
Yeah.
And then I make time for it, right?
It's, I guess, sorry.
I think, well, the last year I know has been the most, and I have these really modest goals. I want to try to do like 4 pages of script a week. But last year was the most productive I'd ever been, and I'm on track this year to be even more productive because I'm just doing better about making sure I get the stuff done that I want to get done. It's pretty amazing.
I mean, sometimes it does help to really just put it down on paper. It sounds funny because you're a writer, but
I know.
just put it down. But also as well, because I tell my partner Eve as well, when things get kind of overwhelming, like not just writing, like just other stuff like tasks and stuff. It's always great to create bite-sized, like smaller goals to actually reach that larger goal, because what it does is that you do get that sense of accomplishment if you do tick off that from your checklist and okay, I'm on track actually to reach the bigger goal. And so I mean that's kind of my mantra as well, to always just kind of what's the saying, to see the forest from the trees. The other way around though, actually to see the trees from the forest and to really zoom in. But that's great, that's cool. I forgot, sorry Will, we've been chatting for a while. You must have been a little thirsty. What I usually do offer the guests a little something. Yes. Are you up for a little tipple of something?
How about some water? Does that sound alright?
Yeah, some water. Yeah, let me just ring the bell. Okay, we're just going to get Samuel's here. He's had enough rest. It's been over an hour.
Thank you.
There, Samuel's very quick with that. There you go. Thank you, Samuel. Oh, look, I'm going to have...
perfect temperature, too.
Excellent. Yes, Samuel's will required it at I'm doing Celsius, but 10 degrees, no more, no less. Thank you, Samuel. And that's from a spring up in the mountains of the Swiss Alps there, Will, as requested.
Excellent. That's more than I could have hoped for.
Fantastic. Here at Grant Mansion, we do not shortchange anyone. So there you go. Samuels, can I just have maybe a milkshake? Thank you, Samuels. Maybe let's make it black orchid flavored. Okay, why not? Well, so cool, great. Thank you. I'm so sorry about that. I'm glad we got the drinks sorted. Samuels was just waiting. He was just waiting for the order. He was fantastic. Such great service here, Samuels. I'll tell Mark. Don't worry. Okay. So Will, just going on with your, I guess your journey with comics as well. So you mentioned again also at the top of the show you're doing a postgrad. So you have worked at a university teaching or lecturing on comics as well?
I work at, I do, during my day job, I do technology. So I can build you some VMware clusters and get you some virtual storage and all that kind of fun stuff during the day. And then at night, for about 6 years, I was teaching. I'm kind of on a bit of a sabbatical trying to get more writing done right now. But I taught at one of our junior colleges. I joke a lot. My wife has an art degree. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I think photography was her focus, but she does a lot of graphic design. And I have a couple of English degrees, and we always joke which degree is worth less. So, she doesn't call me doctor, but one of these days maybe. But I got my PhD in English, and then I decided to do some teaching just because I had never really done it. And part of it was I wanted to kind of stretch myself and see if I could, be in front of a classroom and not just step behind and, read something, try to actually engage. And it was really awesome because I was just teaching basic Comp 1, Composition 1. And after a couple of years, I'm like, hey, I love comics. I want to teach a class on comics. And I first went to the university where I work during the day, and that didn't work out for a variety of weird reasons. But I talked to the director of where I was teaching, and she's like, sure, here, write up your syllabus and everything, which I'd already done. So
that must have looked very eager. Like, look, yeah. I'm very unprepared. Or hang on, my back pocket.
Here you go. And she said, sure, we'll just we'll do it. So we did a night class. I think I got to teach it like 3 times
nice.
While I was teaching, but it was so much fun because I did it. I wanted it to be kind of a really wide overview, but I didn't want to go too far afield into the indie comics because I feel like you can, if you don't have this foundational understanding of how comics works, then some indie comics might just go completely over your head. I wanted the students to be able to appreciate. So I tried to stick with. I tried to stick with my favorite writers. Basically, is what I did.
I was about to say, did you slip in some Grunwald in there? Or?
Not really. Well, he edited some things, but I did. There was a pop quiz because this was more about just discussion and read. We're going to talk about the read. Here's what you need to read. We're going to talk about it. There's going to be a pop quiz. 5 questions. Who wrote it? Who drew it?
Yeah.
Name a character in it. I mean, it was either, if you had picked up the book, you probably got it just from osmosis, And there was always a bonus question, and the question was, who was the best character ever in the universe? And sorry, Looney, but that answer was always Quasar. Okay.
Yeah. I don't mind. Quasar's pretty cool. So yeah.
So I focused on those writers, and the first book we did was, of course, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Which,
I've got to read that. I mean, you've mentioned it twice now. It sounds like a really good read.
It was mind-blowing when it came out, just because he put so many of these things that were kind of only half understood, but it's a comic. He's done it in comic form, and he just talks about how what the core of comics are about sequence. It's about, you have 2 pictures and then you have a gutter in between. Point in time. Time is space, on a comic page. And there's just McCloud, it's just foundational. And to think that we didn't have it before it came out, it's just kind of unthinkable almost, because he built on the work of Will Eisner, because Eisner had I can't remember the title of that book, Comics and Sequential Art, maybe, I think, by Eisner. So anyway, we started out with that book, and then we jumped into Alan Moore. We did a couple of books by Alan Moore. We did, we did Watchmen and V for Vendetta. I personally prefer V for Vendetta because Watchmen is just so bleak. But then we jumped into
Bendis?
No, we jumped into Ellis, and
okay.
I know there's a lot of recent stuff about him, which just kind of.
He's one of your favorite writers as well, right? So
I wrote my dissertation on him, so I kind of feel hugely disappointed, but I certainly believe everything that's been said, just because. Yeah. Anyway, it was hugely disappointing on a number of levels, but we did Transmetropolitan, which they loved, Spider Jerusalem and all that wacky sci-fi stuff in Transmet, and then we did probably one of my favorite series of all time. It approaches Quasar, but Planetary.
Mm-hmm.
Planetary is brilliant on so many levels, and it actually influences what I'm trying to do with crossovers a little bit.
Okay. With what you mentioned about kind of taking a concept?
Fictional reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a single issue where they create a fictional world and then they send people to it and then they bring something back.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. So that definitely influenced crossovers. And then, so Ellis, we do Grant Morrison, we do All-Star Superman.
Oh, yeah.
Let me teach Simonson's Thor.
Yeah.
Snuck that one. We read Thor, which is awesome. And,
why not? A highly regarded run. Yeah.
Of course, we had to do Dark Knight Returns because I actually prefer Batman Year One over Dark Knight Returns, but Dark Knight Returns is that 800-pound gorilla, so it kind of had to be on that syllabus. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of all this different popular Marvel DC stuff.
That was just a precursor, right, to the main event, which was obviously the Manch Sienkiewicz Moon Knight run, right?
That's right.
Of course.
I probably mentioned that in the class, but we did, of course, Mouse.
Yep.
Which was, Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel.
Consistently considered in the all-time greatest comics. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm.
But it was just such a fun class because, one, I was showing them in practice, what some of these things are and how they did it. Two, it was just sitting down and talking to a bunch of other comic fans for 3 hours a week. It was awesome.
Yeah. How did it? I guess you get down to specifics when it came to like marking stuff.
We did. Again, it was more of a kind of a survey class, so it was multiple choice tests.
Okay, right, yeah.
Who wrote it? Who drew it? The character. It was. You had to try really hard not to get an A in the class. Okay.
Fair enough.
Nobody tried that hard.
Yeah. So that would have been a great experience anyway. As you mentioned, to get away from behind the books or behind the actual, academic side of it, theoretical side, and put it into practice as like a teacher to impart some knowledge and to promote discussion amongst people. So that kind of skill, I would imagine, you would have taken bits of that when it came to like podcasting as well, because it can be quite intimidating as well. You've got this big mic in front of you. It's a different environment. You have to, I guess, just I'm struggling now. So like you have to articulate your stuff and make sure that your ideas are kind of concise as well. So when your first experience in podcasting, was that with the Quantum Zone, or had you done something before?
Yeah, excuse me. It was. I think I'd been a guest on a show or two when I was doing the Diary of Night Kickstarter. But it was definitely my first experience. There was a call put out, I think, by Phil. Like, hey, anybody who loves Quasar, you want to do a Quasar podcast? And I'd been. I put the Quantum Zone up a long time ago. QuantumZone.org, which is where I collect all the Quasar stuff about.
Yes, QuantumZone.org, not .net. Not .net, Matt.
Okay. Because I've got appearances out there, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Any original art from the series that I've
It's really good.
I love art.
Yeah.
I've got all those scans out there, and just a place. It kind of became more. It started out really as a way for me, like, I want to collect all of Quasar's appearances. Well, what are they? I don't know. So I just started researching and started writing down what I was researching. So it's a lot of fun. And I haven't updated it in forever. It's been years, literally, since I've updated it. I need to get back to that. But it was fun for me because I could bring like my Thor omnibus, which is over back here in the library behind me.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I love those things. not only can you injure people with them, but you can read them, so it's awesome.
Yeah. If you can't reach anything on the top shelf, you can just step on it as well.
Exactly. So I was able to bring stuff in, from my weird collection of stuff that I've amassed over the years. Like, I brought in some original art for them to look at from Quasar, from my book Diary of Night. Like here's a book from the late 80s, early 90s, and you can see that they did all the lettering on the board. And see it's in black and white. This is the actual board that the artist used. And then I could take it to, here's a page from Diary of Night, and you notice there's no lettering on it. Gee, why is that? Yeah. I'm glad you asked. Because lettering really shifted over to digital lettering.
Right.
In the early to mid 90s, so that probably mid 90s, so that lettering is all done with something like Illustrator, or there's other applications out there, and all the books were put together, kind of digital at that point, so you could then send the files to the press and have them print everything. Artist editions from IDW. I've got of course the Thor artist edition, which reprints the original art, at size.
Fantastic.
And just being able to share this with the students, say that I think this stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, too, and they're like, this stuff is really cool.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Well, also another kind of, I think we'll kind of wrap this up soon, so we can actually get into your For Desert Island or Isla Ra books. There's just a few more questions, Will, if you don't mind, before we jump away to another location. We get whisked away. So I've got to ask one of the staples that we ask as well. So you mentioned that more of a cosmic angled kind of comic book fan. With Moon Knight, I guess. Where have you come across Moon Knight in your journey with comics, and have you read many runs of him at all? Or?
I've read some.
Warren Ellis one, I'm assuming.
Well, I have them, but I don't have all of them yet, so I haven't read it yet. I reckon I read the first issue maybe, which was interesting. But Moon Knight is interesting because I remember, and I think I really first got exposed to Moon Knight from West Coast Avengers.
Ah, very good. Yes.
Which is kind of this, Lost in Space-Time classic run by Steve Englehart and
Al Milgrom.
Yeah. Which was a lot of fun. But I kind of, I guess, been exposed to him a little bit before that because you look at artist Bill Sienkiewicz, and I noticed this, and believe me, I'm not the first person to notice this. I'm probably like person number 1 million to notice this. But when I did it, I was like, wow, this is interesting, because he really started out as kind of this Neil Adams clone.
Yeah.
And then you can watch some of those covers of Moon Knight as he starts to really become himself.
Yeah.
And it's really this amazing process. And it's really those covers that I kind of have, I remember most, from being exposed to it. And you see some of the things that he does now, or you look at, even the New Mutants, when he was doing that with Chris Claremont.
Yeah.
The Demon Bear saga, where he's just getting, and it's not, he's a genius, I think. It's not the style of art that I typically like. I really like clean lines and everything, and he's got this scratch and grit and stuff in his art. But it's just so beautiful what he can do.
Yeah. I think there's nothing... Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, his Neil Adams-esque kind of art was very beautiful as well, very well drawn. You can tell that he obviously knows what he's doing with the pen. But yeah, what I found interesting with that run that you were mentioning with the covers, it was during such a compact period of time that you actually see the development of him coming into his own and his own style. It's really quite remarkable what he did, and you'd have to put that down to, I guess, him willing to just really flesh out and try stuff like straight away. He was, you could argue he was conservative at the beginning, but it wasn't long before he actually tried to use different methods, use different strokes as well. And yeah, he's highly regarded as one of the great artists. It's a real blessing to actually have him on the Moon Knight run, because that art as well, I think, has really kind of molded the world and the tone of Moon Knight as much as Mensch's writing. So they were like a perfect pairing when it came to creating that 1980 run. And if you put that run in context with other comics around that time as well, vastly different. As it kind of went past, say, issue 15 onwards. Yeah.
And it really influenced. I mean, if you look at someone, and I don't think this is, again, I'm probably person number 1 million to notice this, but you look at how I feel like Sienkiewicz influenced someone like Dennis Cowan, who was working with Denny O'Neil on The Question. It had that same. It obviously wasn't the same, but it had a feel like they're stretching their legs, they're pushing the boundaries a little bit with what you can do with sequential storytelling and comic art. It's just amazing, because you're right, it was such a compact period. He goes, you're like, hey, this is a really good, nice cover. It's kind of like Neil Adams, which just makes sense because he came out of that studio, yes. Right? And boom, you jump to some of the later, and it's so different. I mean, obviously the fundamentals are there, but then he's doing some really amazing things. I seem to remember a cover with, what was it, Werewolf? There's a wolf cover, I think. It's been a while since
the black one? Is it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. And I think he treads that line between comic book artist and just like visual artist. His art kind of looks like that. It looks like it should be hanging somewhere in a gallery. Yeah, that's what a lot of his latest stuff as well. I get his newsletter, and he's got his stuff for sale as well. And of course, he's just progressed even further, more realistic, but it's got that very kind of arty, for want of a better word. I'm not very good at it, but a very arty kind of look to it. So steering away from even a comic book looking visual. So yeah.
Well, and then I think I was more exposed to him during the Elektra.
Oh, okay.
Elektra, not Elektra Lives Again, just the Elektra series. That Miller. I went through a Miller phase. Right? Everybody goes through a Miller phase, right? That's where I tried to get everything he did, and it was just, it's so unlike anything else. He really did find his own, unique voice, which is amazing, and it started on Moon Knight. Yeah,
no, it was fantastic. That's great. So I hope I can entice you to read more Warren Ellis Moon Knight stuff. I mean, get the issues. Look, they are all standalone. There is actually a little bit of a thread that runs through them, but don't hesitate if you've just got bits and pieces of them. I reckon you can just read each and every one of them. They're very quick. You'll be surprised how economical Ellis is with them. But they are, I think, they're masterstrokes. Again, a nice partnership with Declan Shalvey, who you've probably seen banding about his wares in Marvel. But yeah, really, really good stuff indeed. I think before we head off, Will, I was just pulling up your rank outsiders. So the 16 comics. I wanted to go through this before we get into the nitty gritty and the main big four that you take to the desert island. So I was just pulling this up now. A few of them I do recognise. So Loonies, these are these made your top 20, Will. So they're highly recommended, I'd say. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I enjoyed. Well, and I put them in alphabetical order because I didn't want to. I didn't. I was like, I'm not going to
give any.
Oh,
yeah.
But there are some. A lot of them I feel like, and I even asked the boys. I was like, because I've indoctrinated them, young to comics, and I kind of like, well, what are some issues that you've run across? And they're like, yeah, I thought of those. Thanks, guys. I've raised you well.
I did, yeah. Correct answer was probably I should have said it. Well, let's just go through these, and yeah, if you can maybe we're not going to get too in depth with them, of course, but maybe what made them special for you. So the first one, this is in alphabetical order. All Star Superman number 10. My gosh, never ending. This is a monumental issue. I just read this, reread this recently for our other podcast, the Superman podcast. But yeah, why was this one a big one for you?
It all comes down to that panel,
Yep.
where he prevents the suicide, which is just amazing.
Yep.
And he, because I went back and reread it, and it was something I taught as well. I had a one student who's like, Superman is just stupid, is lame, and I said, look, try to keep an open mind, read this, and he was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Superman's maybe not so lame, and I'm like, see, trust me. But looking back, I also did rereading the issue and then looking back and seeing how that panel was set up throughout the issue. I mean, Morrison is a phenomenal writer.
Yes,
and
he is.
This issue is, and then the art by Frank Whiteley is it's an amazing book. I mean, that whole run is amazing, but this is, I think, a standout issue.
Yeah, every single one of them so far. I've read them a while ago, but we're going through it now. We've got up to issue 10, so we're doing 11, 12 in our next episode. But every one of them so far has just been out of the park. Morrison is a magnificent writer. This is the most accessible for him as well, because he can write. He can get a little dense and a little over the top, like ideas going over the top of your head. I mean, but yeah, a fantastic one. We've got here Avengers 223 of Robin Hoods and Roustabouts.
That is the best cover that Marvel has ever produced. It is Ant-Man.
Oh, that's Ant-Man and the circus. Yeah, with Taskmaster, of course.
Absolutely, which is just such a fun issue.
A one and done, really. Yeah,
it's really a one and done with, and then Scott Lang's daughter Cassie, is in there, and it's just a great issue. And that cover's brilliant. Ant-Man on, the arrow from that is Marvel's greatest cover, in my opinion.
I would agree as well. I've got it hanging on my wall as well. Also, as well, it really shows Ant-Man's, I think, power really well, and how actually how dangerous he can be. So I really do love that issue. Avengers 285 was the other one, the Wrath of Zeus. Now you got me here on Zeus, so this has got to be good.
So that's the final issue of the Assault on Olympus.
Okay, right.
So Hercules was injured in the mansion siege, the Masters of Evil taking over the mansion, which is Stern's other great epic on the Avengers. And Zeus, because he's injured, he raves in his sleep that the Avengers, and he doesn't like taking orders from the Wasp. So so Zeus basically kidnaps the Avengers and throws them in Hades. Well, they fight their way out. He smacks them down. They get back up. He smacks them down again. And the first page of this issue has normal human Dane Whitman, right? He's a scientist with a magic sword, which is awesome. A scientist with a magic sword, and he's holding Cap's shield. He's like one of the last Avengers standing, and he's like standing up to Zeus, the king of the gods, right?
Yeah,
which is awesome.
He can't be killed with the ebony sword, right? That's the whole thing, isn't it? Or I mean, not to take anything away from that amazing visual, but yeah, that's a.
I think it was when at the time that it had the curse on it, so if he cut anybody with it, he would go insane or something. I can't remember because you're right, the enchantments on the sword have changed over time, but it's just such a great video. John Buscema and Tom Palmer, the art is spectacular, and of course it's Roger Stern.
Yeah, yes, I know that you're a big Roger Stern fan as well. Now this is, we're going street level here, Daredevil 191 Roulette. This rings a bell?
This is the end of kind of Miller's run, where Bullseye's killed Elektra. He's been, had his back broken. He's in a full body cast, laying in a bed, and Daredevil's there with a revolver.
Yes, that's the one. Yep.
And he tells him a story, but ever so often he punctuates that with Russian roulette, and he clicks it. And I'm not going to ruin the story for people who haven't read it, but it's kind of a tour de force. It is really, and it's probably on craft level, one of those best stories ever, single issues ever published.
Yeah. Again, I can't argue with that. That's a good one. This is the thing. There are so many comics out there, so many singles out there, but that's right on point. Fantastic. This is one I thought maybe would have been one that you wouldn't. You mentioned, there's one or two there that you would not think would be in there. Is this one? Am I getting this right? Fantastic Four 352. No time like the present, or it ain't funny, or it ain't funny how time slips away.
That is a brilliant battle between Mr. Fantastic and Dr. Doom by Walter Simonson.
Oh, okay.
And they have little time travel devices. So Doom has captured the Fantastic Four. Mr. Fantastic's captured, but then he shows up a little bit later to fight Doom. Well, Doom says, "Here, we're going to fight." Gives him a little time travel. Well, the first thing he does is go free himself so that he could be there to fight Doom, and then it just gets crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it's such an awesome... And Simonson, I think fanboy is probably too weak a word. I just love Walter Simonson's work.
Yeah.
The breadth and depth of his work is just amazing.
Well, maybe Phil is not too far from the truth then from his predictions. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, Green Lantern Rebirth number 6, Brightest Day. So I'm not too clued in on DC here, so Will, you're going to have to let me fill me in on this.
So I've been a Hal Jordan fan since I was probably since I was on the planet in single digits of years. Okay, To say that I was disappointed, probably with the whole Hal Jordan goes crazy and murders everybody, might be an understatement.
But is that regarded as a great event, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, he was part of the whole reign of the Superman, when Superman got killed. So, him going crazy, I mean, he was the character. He was a test pilot. He was such a product of the 60s, right? He was this test pilot in, science, sci-fi kind of type job. And he was a cosmic kind of cop. Mm. And Rebirth is what brought him back. He wasn't responsible for all the deaths and everything. He was possessed, blah, blah, blah. But there's a scene in it where Parallax, the entity Parallax, basically tells him to quit. And he goes, I don't know how. And then he and the rest of the Corps come back together, and it just sets up everything that Jeff Johns was going to do in that really amazing Green Lantern run. But that single panel has stayed with me. I love that issue. It's such a great read. I've got the absolute version of it somewhere on the back here in the library.
That's great. Yeah, the Green Lantern always intrigues me as well from DC. I think I was telling Phil just the other day, we can't access DC Universe, but if they had something like Marvel Unlimited, I would be plundering Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Flash. I think they're all great.
Oh yeah, they're those really iconic archetype characters, which I'm sure are fun to play with. But Grant Morrison's recent run on Green Lantern is spectacular as well.
Okay, yeah, I've got to get into that as well. This one I recognise, Hawkeye 11. Pizza is my business. This sounds like a Matt Fraction one.
Yep.
Yep.
Pizza Dog.
Pizza Dog.
And
is this a silent one? The dog.
Kind of silent. Yeah. Every so often you'll have some words, and it's just brilliant.
That is
okay.
It's really good.
It's a brilliant single issue, and I don't think Fraction could have pulled it off without someone as awesome as David Odgett doing the art, because he has such a design sense with these kind of this infographic approach to doing certain things, and it's just such a I may offend some people, but I've never been a fan of Iron Fist. But the Fraction Brubaker run of Iron Fist is just awesome. It really is.
It is. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Brubaker as well. I think he's fantastic. Kurt Busiek's Astro City Half. I'm not familiar with. The Nearness of You. Is this
It's so back in the day, Wizard used to put out these 1/2 issues. They would bundle with the magazine, Wizard magazine. This is one of them. It's like a 8 or 10 page story. It's actually free on Comixology if you log into Comixology. But the thing about Astro City is the approach that he takes in that, and it's by Busiek and Brent Anderson, I think, did the art. giant mega crossover, crisis in time, all the heroes meet, time has changed forever, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's the background, okay? It's just off in the background. You don't have to worry about it. The story is basically a man who dreams of a woman, and he can't get this woman. He's never met her. He doesn't know who she is, but he can't get her out of his head. Well, it turns out that, and the Hanged Man is his kind of creepy, mystical character that comes around. He comes around and says, well, she was your wife, but there was this big conflagration back in the 40s that changed time, so she was never born. And I'm going around letting people know that I can get rid of these memories or you can keep them. And the guy asks, essentially, how many people have asked to get rid of them? He says, none. So it's just this great. If you can read this issue and not cry, you have no soul. Okay, it's just so awesome.
I'm gonna have to pick it up. It just said it's free off Comixology, so that should be easy enough to access. Okay, cool. The Nearness of You. Okay, so we've got here Marvel Team Up 1, 2, 3, Burn Heroes Burn. Is this a thing or a Spidey team up? Spidey team up?
It's a Daredevil.
Daredevil. Oh, okay.
And this is this is probably the issue that I was talking most about that nobody's going to put on their best of. It's just a good, solid little team. It's Marvel team up. Okay, I mean that's like tertiary level.
Is this like in the 80s? I guess issue 1, 2, 3. Yep, 80s.
Yeah. So there's a former hitman who's retired, trying to go straight and live a good life to make up for what he's done. He's in a hospital. There's a kid in the hospital. Yeah. And then I can never remember the villain's name. He's a Heat villain. Anyway, Spidey and Daredevil show up. Daredevil's there in the guise of Matt Murdock to talk to this guy because he's going to turn state's evidence and help people. And they have him mention that, look, I've got a lot of metaphorical blood on my hands, right? Well, the bad guy's there to kill this guy so he can't testify and do that. Well, he gets scared, so he grabs this kid who's in there for surgery. And Daredevil's trying to talk him down, say, look, it's going to be okay. We're going to take care of this, but he's afraid. And to save the child, Daredevil says, but you don't want any more blood on your hands. Look. And since the kid had just been in surgery, he actually has blood on his hands. He grabbed the kid, right? So the hitman he sees the blood and it destroys him. And at the end, Spidey says, hey, we won, why so somber? And Daredevil's like, what good is winning if it costs a man his soul? Yeah. And it's just one of those issues that has just stayed with me. I mean, because it's just so well done. I mean, it's not going to win any awards, but it stuck with me, so it had to be on the list at least.
Do you remember who wrote that one?
No, but I can look it up in a minute.
No worries. Yeah, we'll have it in the show notes as well for sure. Because I'm keen to actually. That sounds. Yeah, I love those. The 80s, I think, is very close to being my favorite era. I do like that.
There was just so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, early 80s, you get Perez and Wolfman on the Teen Titans. You get Claremont on the X-Men with a bevy of amazing artists. Stern on the Avengers, Daredevil and by Miller and Simonson. John Byrne was doing probably Fantastic Four at that time. I mean, it's just this great period of really time for comics.
Really good talent. Yeah. So this is one that you mentioned earlier, Planetary, Warren Ellis. It's a Planetary number 10, Magic and Loss.
So Planetary is just this amazing series. John Cassidy is the artist for the entire series.
I know him from the Captain America run, yeah.
And I think Laura Martin, I think she may have been Martin at the time. I think she got married at some point, but she does the colors, and I think she's been, lovingly referred to as a color witch just because she's so amazing at what she does. But this issue is because Ellis likes to play with those archetypes, and he gets to do that inside Planetary, which is looking at what makes these characters cool. Well, he has a Wonder Woman character, he has a Superman character, and he has a Green Lantern character.
Yeah.
And the villains of Planetary basically keep them from ever happening or becoming, in the world of Planetary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's magic and loss. I mean, it's really...
Yeah, I haven't read Planetary, but I do like Ellis's writing, so I have heard a lot about Planetary as well. So should be something worth checking out. And there's another one here. It seems like to be a crossover between Planetary and that man, Night on Earth -- Night on Earth.
Yeah, it's Ellis having a go at the different Batmans. So there's apparently a Gotham City in the world of Planetary, and then this one long story. There's this survivor that when he gets scared or frightened or anything, he kind of shifts reality.
Mm-hmm.
So these people have died horrible deaths because they've been shifted mid-reality or something. So Planetary is there to investigate. That's what they do. They try to find the strange things in the world and keep the world strange.
Yeah.
So they investigate him, and they're investigating in Crime Alley. So Batman shows up. Well, you get the Englehart and Rogers Batman from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
You get Frank Miller's hulking Dark Knight Batman.
You don't get the Kelly.
Again.
Don't get the Kelly Jones one with the big ears.
No, you don't get him yet. But you get the '60s TV Batman.
Oh, okay, cool.
And there's a great thing where it goes. It looks like I can't remember the quote, but it's great because you get these different takes on Batman, and it's funny, but then it's funny and then it's not, because it jumps to this point where this guy is a survivor. His parents have been killed in this kind of sci-fi death camp where they were experimented on, and at the end of the issue you get what can only be called the Ellis Cassidy Batman. They've never worked on the character except here.
Uh-huh.
But he comes in and he says, look, he basically talks. It shows Batman as a compassionate, human character who's like, this guy's lost his parents. That's Batman's whole reason for existing. Mm-hmm. And, he calms him down and says, look, you have to, think about them. And so he helps calm him down. And it's just this really great issue that pays a lot of respect and some humor to the previous iterations of Batman.
Yeah.
And then it ends on this really, kind of hopeful and uplifting note, and it's just a great issue, and it's got great art too.
Is it a one shot? No. Yeah, it's a one shot. Yeah, cool. Now this other one, next one, this one always pops up in people's ISLA RAs as well. Not necessarily this issue, but Sandman number 8, The Sound of Her Wings. Now this again sounds very familiar. It may well have been someone's ISLA RA book as well. But this one, is this the one to do with death? No.
Yes.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Yes, the first appearance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's...
Okay.
So Gaiman really kind of was, he's a spectacular writer. Not just comics, novels.
Yeah,
American Gods is phenomenal. Neverwhere. All of his books are great. But it's where the first 7 issues of Sandman were really kind of structured around looking at different types of horror. Okay? And the overreaching arc was Dream, Morpheus getting back his special things, his sand pouch, his helm, and a few other things. But number 8's really where I think Sandman became the book that it was going to be for the next, 67 issues or whatever, because it's really about him being depressed now that he solved his problems, and he's bored.
Yeah. And
he walks around with Death as she performs her duties. And, there's a great line in there where, this baby, she's taking a baby's dying, and the baby's like, that's it, that's all I get. And she goes, you get what everybody gets, you get a lifetime. And I mean, it's just so.
Oh, that's such a big scene. I know, and all the all the other people she visits as well. It's just this. Oh yeah, it is it is heavy, but at the same time, it's quite an emotional kind of.
Yeah, it's just such a great issue, and I think I can't remember the artist on that. Was that Kelly Jones or was that?
Oh, could be, not Sam Keith. Could be Sam.
Can't remember. Yeah, I'd have to look that one up.
Yeah. Another one here that I'm very familiar with, the Superman Annual 11 for the man who has everything. Alan Moore, and one of my favourite villains, Dave Gibbons, and one of my favourite villains, Mongol.
That's right.
So, of course, this is, again, generally seen as, I think, one of the higher, more popular Superman titles.
Yeah, Moore is just, I mean, he's a genius. Just what he did on Swamp Thing, what he did. I mean, Jeff Johns built most of his Green Lantern run around an 8-page story that Alan Moore did in Green Lantern. You know, I mean, he's just that good. And this story in particular, I mean, kind of gets at the heart of what Superman is. It's got Batman and Robin, Dick Grayson Robin, and Wonder Woman in it, and then of course Mongol, and then it's the Black Mercy is the plant.
The plant, yeah.
That attaches itself to his chest, and he lives on a Krypton that never exploded and has to fight his way back to reality, which is it's just such a great story.
And he has to leave his son as well, which it's a very, like, that scene where the son's really scared, doesn't know what's happening. Like, what are you taking me, Dad? Like, what are you doing? But he knows it's all kind of a figment. Kal-El. You mentioned his Swamp Thing, number 40. I'm assuming, is this an Alan Moore as well, The Curse?
Yep. Another Alan Moore story, yep. That's the werewolf story, where...
You got me intrigued now.
He basically... It's just an amazing story, but he equates lycanthropy and werewolf to, women's cycles and how we... as society kind of look at those, this is male dominated. So it's just such a, and it's done from that horror standpoint that, Swamp Thing, that, because he really put Swamp Thing. I mean, Swamp Thing was, you look back at the original run, Bernie Wrightson did the art, so it was already on the map, but Moore put Swamp Thing on the map as this, super intelligent book with awesome art that could be really about anything. It's an amazing issue, and his first issue on it's I think called The Anatomy Lesson, and it's great too. But this one was the one that I remembered.
Nice. And we've got a last couple here to wrap up your rank outsiders. So we've got a Thor here, Thor 342. I'm assuming that is that around the Walt Simonson era. That's another
Walt. I am such a fanboy. So
the Last Viking.
This is the Last Viking story where there's one Viking left who's praying to Thor. Thor hears it, and it's just an amazing story because it delves into something that Thor is a god, or what does that mean even, and the last Viking wanting a true Viking death. So he tries. It's just a great story.
I love those. I love those stories, that just has that kind of really soul concept, and it's all built around that, and you can kind of get really introspective. So yeah, fantastic. And finally here, this one I'm not familiar with. The Tom Strong number 3. Is that DC or Aztec Knights? Yep.
Yeah, it's ABC, America's Best Comics, which was through Wildstorm, which then was bought by DC. So yeah, it's Alan Moore's America's Best Comics. Okay. Tom Strong was, I think Moore felt a certain level of guilt / responsibility for the grim and grittiness that kind of infected in all of comics after Watchmen. So ABC was to not, I feel like its core concept was to not do that. It was to do, just comics about heroes that are doing the right thing for the right reason, right? And this issue of Tom Strong, well, first off, it has spectacular art by Chris Sprouse. I mean, it's just amazing. He's an amazing artist. But it's a story that illustrates the prisoner's dilemma. Which from the prisoner's dilemma is, let's say you get captured by the police and they say, I'll let you out if you turn on him, and then they're saying the same thing to...
Okay, right.
And trust is best.
Yeah.
Because both people win if you trust each other not to,
Yeah.
Flip or whatever. And he illustrates that in a story where he's taken to another alternate Earth where they have Aztec gods, serpent gods, and it's this really clever, beautiful story about trust is best.
That's cool. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So Loonies, they're a mighty selection there. I might add these in the show notes as well. But we have 4 huge books to
Those
reveal.
are the books that didn't make it.
The books that didn't make it as Rank Outsiders. No, these are the top. These are the heavy 4. So no, fantastic. I'll put these in the show notes. Go check it out, Loonies. If you a really great run through there, Will, of those 16 books. Fantastic. I mean, I'm glad I knew a few of them, so I must be on the right page, you know what I mean? Doing the right thing. Anyway, so have you finished your cold pressed Swiss glass of water with the drop of tangerine and?
I have another drink.
Okay. Because if you're ready, we might whisk ourselves off. We'll take a little short break, Loonies. Will and I are going to whisk off in the Mooncopter. We're going to go away to our first location. But hang on, Will. Why don't you follow me?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll just go through this door. So as we make our way down the corridor to the outside where the Mooncopter is, well, you can see over on your left there, that's the bedroom for Marc Spector and Marlene. They do have a jacuzzi in there. I'm not lying.
Nice.
And there's is she decent? Oh, hi Marlene, how are you? Yeah, this is Will.
Hello.
Yeah, we're just going to pop out.
Oh,
Cool. All right. Well, have you got your coat with you, Will?
Yes, I get that on.
Because it's a little chilly. It's a little chilly up there. The helicopter doesn't have any doors. It's one of those ones.
Okay.
Anyway, listeners, we'll be right back, and we'll go through Will's top 4 Desert Island books. Catch you soon.
Hey everyone, this is Brian, the host of Inner Demons, the Ghost Rider podcast. And since 2017, Inner Demons has been the best place on the web for news, reviews, and regular discussion with our listeners about Marvel's Spirit of Vengeance, Ghost Rider. You can find us on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and many other podcast catchers, as well as on Twitter @InnerDemonsGR. Remember, listening to your inner demons is not always a bad thing. Ride on.
Yes, Loonies, welcome back. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 159. I am with Will Allred, one of the co-hosts from the Quantum Zone, a Quasar podcast. We've had a good old-fashioned chat at Grant Mansion. As you can hear now, it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more reverb around us. We are in none other than Latveria. I know why. That will be revealed to you shortly. So we're in Castle Von Doom. Will there's the stone walls. There are some rich banners hanging from the walls there, and some sort of Latverian music coming from someone's stereo, maybe Victor's, I don't know. Anyway, we are here to review We'll go through your rank 4th, your number 4 for your top 4 Desert Island books. And the first one can be revealed as, I'm happy to say, Phil got this kind of semi-right. It is Thor 362. Will, this one is... Sorry, let me just open up my information here. Bat Out of Hell. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Walt Simonson. So why? Take us through. Why did you choose this issue? It was a ripper of a read. I had not read it before. And it actually piqued my interest because there are a couple of other touchstone references to the movie, which I found fantastic. Yeah. But anyway, why was this one a special one for you?
Well, I am a diehard, long-term lifer Avengers fan. I love the Avengers, and I had a subscription back in the day, so that was way back in the day. But the Executioner has always been associated with the Avengers. You know, he's basically a toady of the Enchantress, and would fight the Avengers, fight Thor. Kind of a really one-dimensional character. And Walter Simonson changed all that. He wrote him as a bit more three-dimensional, and this is that issue where he sacrifices himself to save the souls of the humans that, part of the Cask of Ancient Winter storyline from before, that saved not only the humans, but the host from Valhalla and Thor, save them so that they can get back to Asgard as they leave Hell. And it's just the way Simonson wrote and illustrated that scene where, you see him start to fade.
Yeah, I was about to say,
yeah,
that's absolutely brilliant, that visual, because Walt Simonson, I'll just jump in, released December 1985, Walt Simonson, writer, penciler, inker, he does it all, colorist Max Skeel, letterer John Workman, and editor Ralph Macchio. But yeah, that image of Scourge or the Executioner just fading out with those, I think, the 8 panels or something, really effective stuff. And I found also, Will, I don't know about you, it's going to be a bit hard to explain, but when I read this, there was a seriousness to the story that you don't typically get with comic books, regardless of it being Thor or even a more serious title. It seemed like there were things really at stake here, and it seemed like, I know it sounds silly, but all the characters were really focused on actually having to get out. And
it's funny because, as long as you play it straight, I think Simonson says at some point, you can do something like this, or you can turn Thor into a frog, so it's...
Yeah.
But this issue, and that scene with the Executioner sacrificing himself, and then the words that go along with those panels.
Yeah.
Because, they talk about, that he is spoken of in hushed whispers, even in hell, about, what he was able to do. And, that scene with him, which they did in the movie.
Yes.
With 2 M16s, just fighting off the hordes of hell, so that, Thor and everyone from Asgard, plus the human souls that they've saved, can, get back to Asgard. It's just, it's very poignant. It's just such a great issue that I could not include this one.
It was, really good. I actually had to go back and I watched on YouTube that scene again with Carl Urban. Both the funny introduction of Des and Troy, the two guns, but also that bit at the end where he does sacrifice himself and he leaps off that carrier and just starts shooting the hordes. Because I was just so affected by reading this and going, oh wow, this is it. This is where they lifted it from. But there was so much at stake here, similar to the movie, I guess. So with Thor here, so he had been burnt by Hela, had he? Because he's got a different visage. He's got a face mask. Maybe COVID-19 was around. I don't know. And he had some armor.
So this sets up a lot of what came after for Thor, because Hela curses him. Mm-hmm. And this actually plays into that Avengers 285 issue, because he's wearing his new armor, because she curses him by making sure that he can't die. So he's immortal, which takes away his core identity. You know, he can't risk his life because there's no risk. So that's not what a Viking does, right? You know, there has to be some risk. The other thing that she does is curse him with brittle bones. So that's why he has to wear the armor.
Oh,
He puts the armor on. He grows the beard to cover the scars, and
it's like Mr. Glass.
He tries to get out from under that curse, which we find out that it was kind of all set up, and there are machinations in the background of who set it up and why he had to go through all this, and how he finally gets the curse lifted involves the Destroyer and Hell and the Executioner, and it's a really good issue too. This one sets a lot of that stuff up, because the big story was Searcher from when Simonson took over with Beta Ray Bill and all that stuff. But this series was just so consistently great that I just love it. Got the omnibus, got the artist edition.
Nice.
God, I've got trade. I've got the hardcover. I've got so many versions of this story.
That's testament to really do liking the story. I'm waiting for. I can't remember if on the Epic collections I collect them, whether the Simonson era has been collected. I think there's one coming out with the Thor core a bit later on, which I think is around Beta Ray Bill. I'm not too sure.
It is, but I think that's Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Kind of came on, I think, after Simonson's run. So his ends with, I think the issue is like 383, 382, somewhere in there.
It must be 382, because I've got 383, and he's not there anymore. Yeah.
And I think 382 is like that all splash issue. Every page is a splash page.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty awesome.
That's great. Awesome. Well, again, I highly recommend it to listeners. Walt Simonson, he does great stuff with Thor and the Fantastic Four run. Again, I'm going to shout out the Epic Collection Into the Time stream, which shows part of the run of that. Really does such a different tone in this comic. I think is really just makes it stand out from the ones I read it from your pick actually. Anyway, so. Very interesting indeed. All right, well, we have your rank 3 book here. Hello, Dr. Doom. Yes, Will. Hi, we are in the castle here. Victor, this is Will. Will, this is the good doctor, Dr. Doom.
Your Majesty.
Stop embarrassing yourself.
I was wondering, Victor, can I call you Victor? Would you like to introduce Will's rank 3rd book?
Such chores are what people like you are for.
No, okay, that's fine. I'm happy to do it myself. Okay, thank you, Doctor. We won't disturb you. Hopefully, we'll just touch base with some of the Doombots instead. But anyway, Will, number 3 here. The reason why we are in Castle Von Doom. This is a big one. I love this one. Your ranked 3rd book here is Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Triumph and Torment. Now, this, I believe, is a Roger Stern written graphic novel. Mm-hmm. So on Wiki, this comes up as a Marvel graphic novel number 49. So this came out just as a graphic novel. Roger Stern writing, penciler Mike Mignola, inker Mark Badger, and he does the colours as well, and letterer Jim Novak, and this was out in July 1989. So this is a cracker of a read here, Will. I know why you probably like it, but why don't you elaborate to our fair listeners why you thought this one was a good one in the top 4?
Well, it was a bit of a cheat, so I wanted to make sure I could get as many pages as possible on my 4 books, but accepting that, it really is just an amazing story. You get these really great insights into both characters. You get their origins told as part of the story. It's got wonderful art by Mike Mignola, and then Roger Stern has just told this story that, while great for it's a really great kind of study of of Doctor Strange, it is a Doom story, first and foremost, and how driven and intelligent and
Yes, absolutely.
just amazing the good Doctor is.
Well, he outsmarts the devil, like, which is no mean feat, and I didn't see it coming, because it's so, I guess, what is it? It's so underhanded that it's kind of, he manipulated the way that he would use his mum and seemingly to have her put in peril, but in effect he actually redeemed her. She's redeemed through his action. A really good read here. It was really fun because at the beginning I'd forgotten about because this is a graphic novel. It's quite long compared to a typical comic. But there's that story to begin with the Vishanti, which I found interesting about the competition and that almost comical, like ancient one. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, ancient Genghis, I think. Is
ancient
what
Genghis.
But,
yeah. But you're introduced to him first, and he sets the tone. He draws you in. His introduction to the story, because he comes across Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange. They both have different interactions with him. Relevant to their character, but it ends up being a competition to who is the Sorcerer Supreme, and I remember first reading this going, okay, I'm wondering where this is going, and then it kind of flips because Doom basically employs Doctor Strange to help him on his quest, and then you get that main thing with Mephisto, which is fantastic, and Mignola. I mean, a lot of readers who are probably into Hellboy wouldn't recognise this early Mignola art as well. It's not your typical Mignola art.
Yeah, it's early. It's pre Hellboy, so he doesn't. It's not as big a stark contrast of what he becomes known for. On Hellboy. I mean, you can see kind of the beginnings of it because he's still Mike Mignola, and he's still, the way he uses black and shadow is still amazing.
I was about to say, yeah. Oh, but he amps it up to the next level with Hellboy, and the light and shade is just brilliant there. Not to say that this was not good, it was great, but it was very different from what he's later to become.
And to be honest, I'd forgotten, because I read this again in preparation for this, and I'd forgotten about the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, wow, I don't remember this, but it's good.
Yeah.
But
there's just even this Cockney, I think a Cockney, or maybe, dare I say, an Aussie female magician. It's like, oh, what's happening here? What's going on? It's like really funny.
But yeah, it was just, because I remember, wow, I probably first read this not too long after it came out, and it just kind of blew me away. It was like, one, made me like and understand and even sympathize with Doctor Doom, because his mother is, basically being tortured in hell, and every year he tries to save her, and every year he fails. And now this year he has the boon that must be granted by the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yes,
have Doctor Strange with him, and Strange. I feel. And I think Stern did this on purpose, and he did it masterfully. We're supposed to feel about Doom the way Strange does. Because at first he's like, no, I'm not going to help him take over the world. He's like, I can do that by myself.
Yeah.
I need you for something specific.
Yeah.
And Doctor Strange, his attitude toward Doom throughout the story changes to such that, he feels sympathetic toward him. And because, the book is named after, the triumph and torment, because for him to triumph, he has to endure the torment of having his mother denounce him, and that's a price he's willing to pay. That's Doom is, if there is a price for what he wants, he's all about paying it every time.
Exactly. And there's something to admire about that willingness to self-sacrifice for the good. I mean, it's true he does go the other way and maybe sacrifice others for the good that he feels is good, which is not as admirable. But yeah, absolutely. And I think although this is a must-have, I think, for any Doctor Strange fan, as you say, it pretty much is a Doctor Doom graphic novel for me. It has to be. But we are, as you say, taken through the journey through the eyes of Doctor Strange. So, a really good choice there, Will. But that was your number 3. So, we've got 2 more here. Now, what I think we'll do, like, we usually bounce around to another location, Will. So I wanted to grab Victor again, or one of his Doom bots, and hopefully they can teleport us away to another location, just because I'm getting a little nervous with Dr. Doom here. I mean, we're talking about his family affairs. He might catch wind. We might be prisoners here forever. So let's whisk away to somewhere else. Here's a passing Doombot. Can you maybe please help us out here? We'll pay you later.
Doom needs no one.
All right, Will, hold on tight. I think they've got a teleportation device. Here we go.
All right, excellent.
All right, here we are, Will. This is fantastic. I don't know whether this is a joke or not from them, but we seem to be in orbit in space.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why, but we're here. I think I do know why, because we have your rank 2 number 2 book to take to the desert island. This one I was least familiar with, and as we've come through the journey up to your top 2 books now, I understand it is a Warren Ellis book. It is Global Frequency number 12. So this was a Wildstorm production, an imprint of DC Comics as well. So this was issue 12. Artist Gene Ha. And Brian Wood does all the covers. The covers are brilliant. Actually, the art is phenomenal as well. My gosh, very much something that you'd probably see in not one of the big 2 books. It's more of a. But we also have colorist Art Leon and letterer Michael Heisler, and editor Scott Dunbier. So. Will, I read this, number 12. It is the last issue of the run. Fair to say, for me, I was a little bit out of place as to what was happening, although it did very much seem like a cataclysmic conclusion. Why don't you paint the picture of what this is all about, but also why did you choose this issue?
So, Global Frequency is brilliant, 12-issue series. And each issue is kind of a done in one, but there's some threads that connect everything. But it's basically there is a kind of a known secret organization called the Global Frequency, and they all get these satellite phones, which was really cool at the time. But their leader, Miranda Zero's ex-intelligence operative, and her job and her reason for assembling all of these people together is to kind of find and defuse the unexploded bombs, metaphorically, of the 20th century. So, in one issue, you get a parkour runner in London who has to stop. Who has to stop an attack because she's the closest one. It's a biological attack they're trying to do on the eye, or what's that thing called, the ring, the London
Eye.
Yeah. And so the first thing, the phone goes off and you're on the frequency. You have 60 minutes, 30 minutes a day to save the world, basically. And it's a series of issues. They have to fight kind of this bionic Superman thing that was created in like one of the issues. This Australian police officer has to basically team up with a British agent or something and stop this cult from killing lots of people in a building, and it's lots of bloody gunplay, which but this, so it's lots of different things, and it deals a lot with how the military-industrial complex has built all these stupid things that have killed lots of people and continue to kill people, even though the reason for their existence is gone. And in this issue, in the final issue, the stakes get raised enough so that we find out that a program was accidentally turned back on, and it started a countdown to launch these, what they call kinetic harpoons. Basically, these really big, dense carbon rods. Just launch them at places, big cities on the Earth, so that you get all of the destruction of a nuclear bomb without any of that messy radiation.
And it's such a funny idea in the sense that the way that they painted it was it's very simplistic. It's like almost a catapult system. And all exactly. It is literally just a spear being catapulted down. And the heat kind of gains from entering the atmosphere, and it just like hits the city. Yeah, it's a really good concept.
And the thing is, the people that are guarding the way to shut it off, as soon as it was activated, they won't take any messages, so you can't tell them to shut it off because it violates its stupid system, right? It's military intelligence at its best. And so they call out, the call goes out on the global frequency, we've got to get somebody in orbit to stop this. Mm-hmm. So there's a private Elon Musk-ish, I'm not a fan, but there's a private kind of person like that they're trying to do their self launches. So one of them gets launched into orbit and to try to stop it, and while Miranda Zero and some of the other agents go in and have to kill all these military people so that they can But the reason it's on this is because it's the last page, because this guy he just wanted to be an astronaut. He wanted to go into space. He gets launched into space, and he's there, and he tries the thing, but he gets burnt out. So the only way to activate the bomb to save the world is for him to be there and sacrifice himself. Yeah. And the speech at the end that he gives is just amazing before he blows himself up and saves the world. And it's, it's awesome. Yeah. It really is. I'm not going to spoil it, because if I try to read it, I'll just screw it up. But it's amazing. It's
something definitely that we should leave for the Loonies. Anyone that's interested to go check it out. Check out all the other preceding issues as well. Read the whole thing. 12 issues. You can really burn through that.
It's two. I think it's in 2 trade paperbacks that you can get. World on Fire, and I can't remember the other, anyway, or something like that. But they're really great issues. And the thing is, he works with a different artist each issue, and he plays to the strengths of each artist for that issue. It's amazing.
Oh, the art is phenomenal. Oh my gosh, it's brilliant. The amount of the perspectives that they use as well, the way that I know it's all maybe digitally manipulated, but the way that the text and stuff is all kind of skewed and everything. It's filled with information, each of the pages, and it's really good indeed. Definitely worth checking out. Okay, well. Global Frequency, I've never heard of it before, but thank you. Well, this is why we have people on. I love hearing these new things, so I'm for sure going to check it out. All right, number 1. Oh, hang on. By the way, we are in orbit, right? What you just mentioned, kinetic harpoons, right? I had a little glance out the window there. Something just looked similar to that. That's all. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. And I heard a little beeping, but anyway, that's by the by. Okay, so your number 1 ranked book here. No surprises here, Loonies. And ding, 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 ding. Drop King Phil. You picked it like a dirty nose. Seriously. We have here number 1, Quasar 25. Let me pull up the details here. I'm sure this was, of course, written by the two creators here of Mark Gruenwald and Greg Capullo. They did such great work with Quasar. This was released August. We've just entered the 90s, 1991. So Gruenwald, Capullo, inker Keith Williams, colorist Paul Beckton, letterer Janice Chang, and editors Ralph Macchio and Len Kaminsky. Now, what an awesome issue here to pick, Will. This is the wrap-up again, so a little bit of a common thread here, the finales here, Will.
Endings, yes.
Endings. Cosmos in Collision, Part 7 of 7. This was called Prologue 7, All or Nothing. So first of all, Will, why this one? I can guess a couple of reasons, but...
So, it's, first off, the writing, is brilliant.
Agreed.
Mark Grunwald just knows the Marvel Universe, and he gets it. Excuse me a second. But the art, this is early Greg Capullo. And early Greg Capullo is great. He takes a break after this issue and then comes back on issue 27, and it's like he levels up. It's just like, what did you do? You were great here, and you got even better here. And
you're holding back? What's going on?
Yeah, it's amazing. But this issue is the finale of Cosmos and Collision. And I've said this publicly many times. Cosmos and Collision is bar none the best Marvel Cosmic ever. You can keep your Infinity Gauntlet, you can keep all that other stuff. This is the best Marvel Cosmic.
And for loony listeners that haven't listened to the Quantum Zone, where you have mentioned that before, I reckon I would agree as well. I mean, I haven't read as many Cosmic events, but Cosmos in Collision is tight. It tells a good story. All the wheels are churning. The characters are just well fleshed out. Fantastic stuff. And
so it's a 7-parter. It starts with Capullo comes on Quasar with number 18, and Cosmos in Collision starts with number 19. So he's the artist for the series while that's going on. I feel like, because the way Grunwald struck. First off, I love Quasar. I feel like if I were suddenly teleported into the Marvel Universe, that's who I'd be. Okay,
Sorry, Will. Let's just, as well, because the more and more I read of it and follow you guys on the Quantum Zone, the more and more, and actually saw it on YouTube, Quasar is beyond Omega level. He is a massively powerful being. Like, I don't think many people realize just how powerful Quasar actually is. And you see it here in this issue. So sorry, I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
The quantum bands essentially mean he has infinite power, but he also has infinite responsibility. So that's the core of the book, is that you've got all this power. What are you going to do with it? And you're responsible for, life in the universe. You're a champion of life. You're a protector of the universe, and dealing with that, that responsibility. Because it's Wendell Vaughn, middle name Elvis, which is awesome. Wendell Elvis Vaughn he's a nice guy. His first instinct is not toward violence. He is as a protector. He's not a cop. He's not. He's somebody who generally wants to help. And the cool thing is, and I think we've talked about this in the Quantum Zone, is. There's a story. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but I'm going to tell it. It's such a great story. Mark Waid is known as having an encyclopedic knowledge of DC continuity. He can tell you about the different types of kryptonite and where they first appeared and what their effects were and all of these things. The Legion of Substitute Hero. Any small bit of trivia about the DC universe, he knows. One person beat him and knows more, and that's Mark Grunwald.
Yeah. Well, he wrote most of the Marvel Handbook, right? He and Peter Sanderson. Yeah.
So Mark Grunwald has that Silver Age DC aesthetic, because the heroes of the Silver Age were great humans and great heroes. Okay, Marvel heroes typically had kind of a little bit more feet of clay. They were still heroic, but they had normal type problems. They weren't, these paragons of humanity that, the DC characters were. And Grunwald, I think, loved that, because I get the feeling that Wendell Vaughn and Quasar was almost like a Silver Age DC character that existed in the Marvel Universe.
Okay.
And at the time, the Marvel Universe was becoming kind of progressively darker. This is the grim and gritty post-Watchmen.
And the 90s
Punisher had
kind of
yeah.
yeah.
Punisher had 19 titles and blah blah blah. Ghost Rider and all those things. And yet you had this character that was well-adjusted. He was happy for the most part. He seriously wanted to help people and didn't. His standard operating procedure was, bad guy comes up to me, put him in a bubble. Okay, so he can't hurt me or anybody. It was about his really wanting not to hurt people. He was there's a scene in Quasar 28 or 29 where the Jack of Hearts is being controlled by Moondragon, and there's this dampening field, so nobody has powers, and Jack of Hearts is going at him, and he's like, stop, he's blocking him. Like, stop, man, I don't want to hurt you. Just, And of course, Jack of Hearts grabs his cape. No cape, sorry.
I just love how, I think I mentioned it on the show in my copious feedbacks to you guys, just how I love how Wendell strategizes about stuff, and it's not just brute force. He'll actually try to think of ways. He'll try to understand the problem, and then approach it in a very kind of reasonable way.
Yeah, and the way Grunwald structured it, he always knew from the beginning that as soon as we get an origin story in issue 1, which actually takes place before his first appearance in Captain America 217, I think.
Oh wow,
something like that. So back in the day, he was a member of the S.H.I.E.L.D. super agents, but we get the first issue that takes place before all that, and then the second issue takes place kind of after the Project Pegasus saga, and a lot of those early appearances that he had. And he's set up that you're appointed protector. You have to fight a specific threat. The threat is coming. Here are the clues about the threat. Go do your thing. By Eon, who appointed Captain Marvel as the previous protector. So what we see is gradually, as the series progresses, him kind of starting to come into his own as, getting confidence and doing things, because he's always quick to criticize himself.
Yeah.
Again, he's a character he tries to do the right thing. His idol is Captain America. Who can live up to that, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't live up to it, you get kind of down. And it's interesting because in that second issue, he's trying to find out about the origin of the quantum band, so he goes out to Uranus. And
we need that drop from Phil.
We do that joke all the time. Anyway, he goes out there and he kind of meets his opposite number. If you look at the Marvel Universe, you have eternity on one side and death on the other side, life and death. But Grunwald kind of made it instead of a straight line, between these two, he added dimension. You have oblivion and infinity.
I love it.
And which, the big 4 points, I think, on the cosmic axis is what he called it. And
so, sorry, well, what was it? The 4 was infinity, oblivion, eternity, and death. Death. Yeah.
And so he meets kind of his opposite number, even though he doesn't know it's his opposite number yet. But he meets Death Urge, and Death Urge kind of senses that he kind of came out all this way because he flew out there sublight speed. It took him years to get there, and he was in suspended animation.
Yeah.
And Death Urge basically tells him he came out there to die.
Yeah.
And and that rattles. That shakes his confidence. And it isn't until Eon says, "Look, you're the protector."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay," and then he's able to push back Death Urge, and then we get this great cryptic quote from Death Urge, which is, "The next time we meet, you're going to beg me to kill you, and I'm going to refuse." And you're like, "Whoa, that's dark," and it happens.
Which is so good. The payoff is so good.
Yeah, and so we get through Cosmos and Collision, where Quasar loses his arms. He loses the bands.
He gets put through the ringer.
Gets put through all the ringers. And then finally, the way it opens up, because you have. This is truly a cosmic event. You get the Watchers,
Yep.
And Grunwald just knew how to write the Watchers. You know, he just knows how to write the Watchers. You get the Celestials show up. You get all of these cosmic races that are watching as, you know, the universe is, you know, quickly approaching a point where it's going to be destroyed. And it all comes down to Wendell against Maelstrom, and
such a good villain as well. I mean, he was a nothing villain in the West Coast Avengers, and he's just so well fleshed out here. Yeah,
it's awesome. And then he doesn't beat him, you know, with the infinite power that Infinity's given him. He beats him with his brain. It's just so awesome.
It's really good as well. Yeah, that's right. It was a technical loophole, wasn't it? Almost.
Exactly.
Because Maelstrom had, I guess, absorbed or assimilated the anomaly, which was another kind of force in the universe, and that was what was going to ensure his victory. But Wendell pulls out this thing saying he is the ultimate anomaly.
Because of issue number 18, where he became a walking reality inversion. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And that undoes it all, and this huge black hole starts spewing out light from in it, and that's Wendell. I love the Avatar fight scene with Infinity, and Oblivion. It was just really, really well thought out. But it's a must-read for loony listeners out there who may like the Infinity Gauntlet. I cannot laud this one enough. Cosmos in Collision. It's only 7 parts as well, but it's brilliant. There aren't any tie-in issues or crossover. It's not like that. It's a self-contained Quasar arc, and you have Grunwald and Capullo at their best. But yeah.
And actually, I mean, it's cool thing is as good as this is that Grunwald and Capullo, and then later with Inker Keith Williams, and later Harry Candelario, Quasar just kept getting better for a while, and it had this momentum. It was just such a great book. And then in 38, Capullo and Candelario, well, Capullo leaves on art. We get another great artist, Steve Lytle, but he only lasts an issue and a half.
Yeah.
So they had this great momentum built up, and then it just kind of, it feels like the book stumbles after that. But you can get, I think the first 25 issues are available in 2 trade paperbacks at this point.
Yep.
I want an omnibus, and
I want one as well. Absolutely. There's 60 issues there screaming for omnibus, or 2 omnibus, omnibuy. You're right. I'm so gutted because you're right. Two trades. The first trade is only issues 1 to 9, I think, or 1 to 8, and that's long out of print, so it's hard to find. I don't know. Maybe in the US it's easier, but then you have a big, thicker trade which is entitled Cosmos in Collision. It's got that Todd McFarlane cover of Quasar. The last person you'd think you'd be drawing Quasar, but he does the cover to that, and it's really good. But it definitely needs an omnibus for sure.
Yeah, and the so it also includes a 4-part series called Journeys into Mystery, which is really, in my mind, Quasar's 13, 14, 15, and 16, where the book, it was good, solid superhero story for the first 12 issues, but not, I mean, and I like the character a lot, but it wasn't really a lot to write home about.
Yeah.
With issue 13, it starts being something to write home about. Mike Manley's doing the art, which is great, but you start getting, I think, to what Grunwald really wanted to do with the series and the character, which is explore all the strange and weird parts of the Marvel Universe. We get the Watcher, and we get all these weird characters that we haven't seen in 20 years or 10 years, and the book, just from that point on, it picks up momentum. You get a fastest man alive race that Barry Allen comes in and wins from DC, which is awesome. Number 17. 18 is our kind of pivotal point where Capullo joins, and we learn about Origin, which is another one of those abstract cosmic beings, and Unbeing, which becomes important in this issue. But yeah, that second trade, I think, is most of the best Quasar. If we could get some of the stuff that happens, up to like 39, 40, I think it would have all of the best of Quasar at that point. It's because it's such a great book. And I mean, you get to the character where he's like, in the Infinity War crossover. He Cap tells everybody, look, we're going to meet these people. Don't attack them. We need to find out what's going on. So the first thing everybody does is like jump to the attack.
Yeah.
He bubbles them up and it's like, I didn't think they were listening, Cap. I hope it's all right. He goes,
yeah.
Wish I had a team full of you, and that's just, he's confident and the art is beautiful and we're exploring all these weird parts of the Marvel universe. It's just such a great book, and I really feel like, one, this is a double-sized issue. So we're getting more page count, for Desert Island. And two, the art is spectacular, the story is great, and it really epitomizes, in my mind, kind of all the great things about this character that I love so much,
Yeah, and I think you've actually, what I reckon, Will, is, you talked about how a lot of the great stories around that kind of first third or so of the whole 60-issue run, things kind of maybe level out a little. I reckon because, and you said it lost a lot of momentum, it stumbled. I reckon it's because, exactly as you say, Quasar, he's a protector of the universe. He's got a lot of responsibility. I reckon because he had such an integral part in the Marvel universe as a whole, like cosmically, that when they did these grand events like Infinity Gauntlet, you could not include him. And then once you do include him, like, you can't just tokenly include him, but once you do include him, then that would affect his solo run, because you're starting to mess with potentially too many cooks spoil the broth, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, so it's a bit of a shame. But you're right. There's a nice slab of really great storytelling in the Quasar run. So go check it out, listeners. So Will, thank you for those. Were your 4 Desert Island books? They were fantastic. Oh, actually, sorry. So you mentioned we are in orbit, right? And kinetic harpoons. Now I did hear some beeping. Now that thing outside, though, is that the bomb?
Hey there. I'm sure you know about the Capes and Lunatics podcast, but have you heard about the Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast? It's a fun home for classic and new reviews of just about everything. We have the Ultimate Spider Cast, where we cover everything Spider-Man. The Quantum Zone, where we talk the classic Marvel character Quasar and do deep dives on the cosmic side of Marvel. We also have Comic Capers, where we cover everything old and new in comics. It could be anything, any company, any decade. And we also have our Media Mondays, where we cover some kind of TV show, be it a Arrowverse current hit, or our summer specials, where we do reviews of classic episodes of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer spinoff Angel. So, if you're a fan of pop culture and media, you should really check it out. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed.
Yes, Looney listeners, sorry about that. Will and I, we were caught in the satellite. It seemed that had to be diffused, unfortunately, but thankfully we kind of got out of it. As you can see, we're in a slightly slimier, squelchier part. I think we're inside Eon. Can you believe it?
But
not
again.
Let's hope we don't see any cut limbs or hopefully quantum bands in here. But Will, I wanted to thank you so much for coming onto the show, for bearing with the various locations that we had to endure. But it's been a really insightful chat to know a bit more about you and your love for comics, but also to go through, hey, talking about bonus content, we've got 20 comics here that Will has brought to the table. The 16 rank outsiders, but we did get your top 4 books. So thank you so much.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been absolutely awesome. So Loonies, what we have next phase in our episode 160 is that we have another review of the Avengers So Avengers 35, I think we'll see is part 3 of the Age of Khonshu. So that will be on next phase. Forget about the phases of the moon there. Also, as well, you can contact. Oh, actually, Will. Before I say that, where can people contact you if they want to learn more about just your love for Quasar, your love for Walt Simonson, or if they want to learn more about your Kickstarter projects?
Probably the easiest way is to join up to the mailing list. If you go to diaryofnight.com, there's a subscribe button there, and I send out a weekly newsletter. If you're interested in Quasar, quantumzone.org has all kinds of stuff that I've gathered together about the character. Cool thing, for instance, is you could write into Quasar and get something that Mark Grunwald wrote, which was everything you wanted to know about the quantum bands, which was he made for an editor or for other writers that were going to use Quasar. So I scanned that and got out there and got the text of that out there. So all kinds of just cool behind the scenes stuff, original art, sketches, things like that. And then I've got willallred.com is kind of under construction every day because I'm a lazy slacker. But if you're just interested, diaryofnight.com is also where you can find out more about Diary of Night, and you can always email me or hit me on Twitter, WALLRED on most of the places, Gmail and Twitter and Facebook and probably Instagram, but I don't think I go out there very much. So
TikTok? No.
Yeah, no, not yet.
No, well, thank you so much, Will. We'll again, as always, chuck them in the show notes as well, so you can check them out. Easy to access. Drop Will a line, and better still, check out his coming up projects and Diary of Night as well, which is available out now.
And don't forget the Quantum Zone with
Absolutely.
Phil and Matt, which is a lot of fun every week for us.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, we heard Phil towards the beginning of the show there on the wax cylinder, one of the co-hosts. Will is actually the third of the hosts now. I've completed the set, I've got the card collection. Phil, Matt, and Will now have jumped on the ISLA RA. It's really great. I learn a lot from these guys, not only from their podcast, but also now from their ISLA RAs, knowing what they're reading and discovering new stuff. So from us as well, you can contact us on itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Discord, Podchaser. We have a Patreon page, patreon.com/ITKMoonnight. We have 2 sponsors I forgot to mention at the top of the show. Anyway, Hello Headphones. If you put in the code ITK Moonnight, you'll get 10% off their online store. Go grab yourself a nice pair of headphones. Or Dreamland Comics, the superhero superstore from Illinois. If you type in the code MOON on their website, you get 20% off. So a nice big chunk there. Also as well, actually, thirdly, from one of our previous podcasts, 15% off, I believe, if you go to night__shop on Instagram. That is hosted by Sandy. He sells comics and stuff off there. Just send him a DM with Into the Night and you'll get 15% off as well. So great supporters of the show. Thank you so much, sponsors. Thank you one and all. Finally, we are part of the collective. So like the Quantum Zone, like the Quasar Podcast, we are a member of this informal podcast network. We just love, as you can tell, we love our comic characters. Some podcasts are character-based, but others are more geek-oriented, geek culture-based. So Capes and Lunatics, Capes and Lunatic Sidekicks, Signal of Doom, and I'll chuck in another one there. We have a Hulk, sorry. So check out the members, all the links in the show notes as well. They're fantastic shows, and you too can learn a lot from them. So Will, I think we're going to have to just bite the bullet and eat our way out of here. What do you reckon?
I'll see if I can find a fork.
And with that, loony listeners, a big thanks to Will, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.